Evening. Welcome to the Town of Penfield Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 14th. We'll call this meeting to order. The first item, any agendas or deletions to the agenda tonight?
I've got a quick update on disc golf.
Okay, we'll put that under new items.
Sure.
And I've just got one update. Our active transportation plan presentation is actually a climate action plan. Apologize to Tom and his team. It's not inaccurate that plan is going on, and Tom's overseeing that too, so I swear it wasn't my complete brain losing track of things or anything, but yeah. So it'll be a climate action plan presentation tonight.
Okay, thank you. So everybody got to look at the minutes from their last meeting that Don sent over. We made all the corrections, so no objections. We'll take those meetings. So, okay, perfect. All right, so the first item for discussion is the climate action plan, and we have a presentation tonight.
Okay, thanks. Happy to be here again. I'm Tom Robinson. I'm with Colliers Engineering and Design in the Rochester office. I'm also a Penfield resident. I live kind of on the west side of town, south end of Ellison Park. And I was thinking about this today, but probably over the last 30 years or so that we've lived in Penfield, not a week goes by that I'm not in some park doing something or on the trails. So happy to be working particularly with this committee on this project. So yes, we're talking about the Penfield Climate Action Plan. There is an ongoing active transportation plan as well, and there's some overlap between the two of them, so we can talk about that a little bit as we get into it here. I'll walk through these slides in probably 20 minutes or so. We'll go over the project purpose and some of the New York State climate goals that the town is trying to align with. We'll talk about the process and the outcomes for this project, current efforts, how things are going, next steps, and then we'll have time at the end for any of your questions or discussion about the project. So the Climate Action Plan, the town is actually doing this in two pieces. So phase one are the town facilities and operations, things directly within the town control, kind of, zooming in on that, looking at it very carefully in terms of fleet operations, equipment, buildings and facilities, everything that the town works with on a daily basis. Part two will come after, and that'll be a community-wide climate action plan. So that'll reach out to the greater community and really address residents' concerns, gather more information, and look at the town of Penfield with a much wider lens. But right now we're on the town operations, phase one part. Some of the goals behind the project are to reduce greenhouse gases, GHGs. We're going to address both climate mitigation and adaptation. We'll talk a little bit about what that means and how we're going after it. We're going to try to create both short-term and long-term goals, actions, and policies for the town that are innovative and achievable. We do have a community engagement component of the phase one, and that'll just sort of set the stage, gather some early information, primarily keep people informed about what we're doing with the project and gather their feedback. We're looking to identify opportunities to satisfy some of the requirements of New York State programs, including clean energy communities. Although at this point the town is not officially pursuing certification, they want to position themselves to do so possibly in the future and have their homework done. And then finally, during phase one, we're going to build momentum to spur action and create a path to transition to phase two, which is the bigger town-wide climate action plan. So those are the things we're after. This is the fourth committee that's hearing this presentation. And we try to upgrade it each time we do it and make it a little bit customized for the work that you all are trying to do. One of the questions we had in an early presentation are, what are greenhouse gases? So A lot of this folks know, but there's also just some general education that we're trying to provide as part of this project. So greenhouse gases are gases that occur naturally in the atmosphere, and they tend to absorb a significant amount of heat energy and actually radiate that back towards the Earth. So the reason they're called greenhouse gases is because they trap heat like the roof of a greenhouse, and basically keep our surface a little bit warmer. They're naturally occurring. We have to have them. If we don't have greenhouse gases, we have an ice age, and things are kind of going that direction too much. But the key is the balance and having the right amount so that we can keep a stable climate and provide for really the life on Earth and the biodiversity and the natural systems that we've all gotten used to. So it's really finding the right amount and trying to mitigate some of the human impact, which primarily comes from burning fossil fuels and putting more of these gases into the atmosphere. So the main types of gases that we typically think of are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor. And at this point, I'll just let everybody know I'm not a climate scientist. So I'm a project manager, community planner, and landscape architect. But I've done a lot of work in Penfield, so that's why I'm on this one. Technical questions, if you have them, give them to me later. We do have a project partner called Acre QEA. They're a national firm. They have a team that specializes in climate action plans. We've done several with them, love to work with them, and they've been involved with this project from the beginning. Okay, so New York State has been fairly progressive and robust in their climate planning activities. They have provided some statewide goals, which may get updated soon. So we're tracking that, but we're working with the existing goals that New York State is giving to communities at this point. One of the big ones was they're trying to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to get to 85% below the levels that we had at 1990, and they want to do that by 2050. So that's pretty aggressive. Progress has been made and is being made, but I know they're looking at where they are with those goals and if they need to be adjusted or pushed out. So we're tracking that as well. So some of the programs include Climate Smart Communities. That's run by New York State DEC. NYSERDA does the Clean Energy Communities program. All of these have goals for certifications that communities can pursue. Those are part of our program for this project to look at those, but again, not necessarily committing to going after the certification, which requires quite a heavy effort on the town end as well. But this project is one of the things that you need to provide should you choose to go after those in the future. Goals and strategies include specific segments in subject areas, energy, transportation, land use and livable communities, waste and materials management, et cetera. And we're also following the Finger Lakes Regional Sustainability Plan, which obviously we fall into. So it's interesting to do this now in Penfield because there's some ongoing planning initiatives that this project clearly connects to and overlaps with. You have fairly recent updates to your comprehensive plan, which talk about climate smart communities as well as several other things connected to that. Andrew brought it to our attention that we have an active transportation plan. That's been going on for several months now. We're actually looking to have a draft report of that in the town's hands within a month or so. So that project's a little bit ahead of this one. But obviously there's a lot of overlap, and we want the overlap. We're trying not to put these things in boxes and silos, but really look at how they do intersect and what's the bigger bang for the buck that the town can get from looking at them and their connectivity. We are also looking at peer communities in Monroe County, so some of our neighbors and climate action planning work that's already been done. Specifically, Monroe County The Penfield plan is very much modeled on what Monroe County did over the last few years. So again, they did a part 1, which are the county government operations, and then a part 2, which was much more extensive for Monroe County overall and the community engagement plan. So we're looking at what Monroe County did. We're coordinating with them very closely because they have a lot of data that's relevant to our project. One of the big recommendations out of the county plan was to hire a county sustainability supervisor, coordinator, and she's already been hired, and she's on this project committee. So we're definitely in tune and getting good support from Monroe County. The city of Rochester did their original climate action plan several years ago, so they are just embarking now on an update. So they're kind of updating their data and looking at their goals and revisiting those. They're kind of on version 2 of their climate action planning. But we're also tracking what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what they're prioritizing. Town of Brighton created their climate action plan maybe 3 or 4 years ago, fairly recently. They did a good job. They were very creative with their citizen engagement and opportunities for people to chime in and interact with the project. That website is still up and running, so if you're interested in what Brighton did, you can go and look at it. Some of the things I really liked there was they created a website with a platform called an idea wall, where people had an interactive map of the town, and they could actually go and put comments, opportunities for different areas of climate improvement. And then everybody else could see that and make comments on it, give a thumbs up, thumbs down. So it was really creating a conversation about climate action opportunities in the town. So when we get to the community part of Penfield, we'll look to do something similar to really try to draw out what people see in their everyday lives and what their concerns are. And the town of Gates is currently engaged in a climate adaptation plan, which I think they got started on pretty recently. So these are some of the communities around us that have similar efforts going on. Okay, so the two sides of the climate action plan are adaptation and mitigation. So you'll hear those words a lot. Adaptation refers to actions to manage the impacts of climate change. So really looking to do things like make your shorelines flood resistant. Stream channels are protection from erosion. So the impacts of climate change can be extreme precipitation. It can be droughts. It can be increased heat. So these are all the things that if we make measures to make those more comfortable and maintain our quality of life, that's adaptation. Mitigation are actions to reduce the emissions that are contributing to climate change. So that's the greenhouse gas reduction. And for Parks and Rec, that's reduction in the vehicle fleets, any equipment that burns greenhouse gases, whether it's gas-powered leaf blowers, all of those things, we look to reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we're burning. So that's one way to do that. When you put those two things together, adaptation and mitigation, you get a climate resilient community. And resilience is the capacity of the communities to accommodate and recover from hazardous climate events and conditions, including floods, droughts, wildfires, and extreme heat. So these are just some of the vocabulary that we're keyed into, but they're the main parts of what we're looking for in terms of climate action.
Tom?
Yes.
Are there methodologies that measure the impact of the different types of actions, either
There are.
adaptation or mitigation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's a lot of data.
I can think like vehicle emissions, yeah, that would be an easy one. But some of the other ones, I don't know how you would measure. Or even
There are metrics, and there's research that kind of puts averages out there. So, that's something that Anchor QEA helps us with because they work all around the country. They sort of have latest best practices and the most updated metrics to try to measure some of this stuff. So that's part of what we try to bring to the town. So there's one group that's actually kind of based in Rochester. It was started by a former RIT professor called the Eco Restoration Alliance. And I bring this to this committee's attention because it has to do, it relates to the management of parks and open space. So they're an international consortium of clients, scientists, and experts, but they talk a lot about and research what their term is carbon tunnel vision. So they think there's actually an overemphasis. We got blinders on if we're only looking at reducing greenhouse gases. What they're saying is even if you got those reductions down to, you know, pre-industrial revolution levels, at this point we've gone so far that that in itself won't turn things around in time. What you need to do is, yes, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, but you also have to work to restore the ecosystems that over the ages have actually maintained a balanced climate on this planet. So a lot of their research is looking at how you can bring those ecosystems and their restoration and enhancement and protection into a broader vision of climate action. So one of the things that's interesting and some research that we've been keyed into recently is the role of healthy soils in climate action, which we usually think about what's going on above the ground. We know a lot about what tree canopies do and what green plants do through photosynthesis in terms of sequestering carbon. But it turns out that according to some research, almost 75% of terrestrial, so land-based carbon sequestration happens below the soil. And this is healthy soils and all the microorganisms, specifically fungi, that live in the soils and have associations with root systems of trees and plants. So that's something that we do have metrics to talk about, how much, per acre, how much of that is happening and how much carbon is being held back from becoming greenhouse gas. And it's relevant to parks and open space management because we have a lot of open space and natural systems. We can try to understand what they're doing and how we can help them do that and still maintain their function and level of service as public parks. So that's kind of an angle that this committee might be especially interested in. We've just started to gather a little bit of information and insights to the individual parks in Penfield, just starting that process. That's going to be an ongoing conversation. But the town manages, I believe, and correct me if this needs to be updated, but around 1,400 acres of parks and open space, something like that. That came up in one plan.
Combination of everything, it's probably pretty close to that.
In the ballpark. Yeah. So based on ecosystem analysis for upstate New York, if you got 1,400 acres of varied parkland and open space, you're probably keeping between 1,800 and 2,400 metric tons of carbon out of the atmosphere annually through those natural systems. I looked at Sherwood Fields Park because that's primarily naturalized open space, so took that one first. Roughly 80 acres. You got about 40 in meadow and fallow fields and about 40 acres in forest and shrub wetlands. So we can look at averages on a per acre basis for those cover types and how much they're doing in terms of climate mitigation and adaptation. And then it's interesting to note that the soils, because you have deep-rooted meadow grasses there, those soils actually do more for climate mitigation than like some other typical land cover types. So what's happening in the soils is something that we'll look at pretty quickly to get a handle on how the parks are actually contributing to our climate balance. So formerly managed lands that we're allowing to renaturalize or revert back actually sequester carbon at a higher rate during the regrowth phase. So this was interesting, and I thought it applied to Shadow Pines specifically. You've got your master plan, you're going to be doing work there, but some of that area that was formerly managed, whether it was, the golf course itself, is going to be allowed to renaturalize. So that one gets some extra stars for balancing climate at a higher rate because of their regrowth. So there's a lot of specifics with, what we're doing in the parks, how we manage them, what the maintenance and operations can do to help reduce the greenhouse gases and maintain these ecosystems. Penfield's got a really wide variety of stuff going on in our parks. So all different kinds of facilities, all different types of land cover, different programming. So it's very interesting to look at how that can be a piece of climate change and climate adaptation. So things like energy efficient facilities, naturalizing managed landscapes as much as we can and still provide the services and programming we want to, potentially electrifying some of the fleet is a possibility, and then how we handle waste and management recycling are just some preliminary bullets of things we'll look at relative to this kind of phase one town facilities and operations. So we consider the open space and parks. We've got physical facilities like lodges. They obviously use energy. We can figure strategies to reduce that and still keep the level of service up. The good news is, and you ask about metrics, Don, there's a lot of research and a lot of guidance out there from everything from National Forest Service, National Park Service, the American Society of Landscape Architects has a whole bunch of construction specifications that we can use if we're doing improvements to parks that hold down the carbon footprint. So we will compile these sources, pull out the best practices relative and appropriate for Penfield, and make that available to the town as well. So our process is kind of a 5-step process. Right now, we're engaged in the baseline greenhouse gas inventory. From there, we'll work with the town to select reduction goals, like what do we want to do over what kind of time frame. Some of that will align with the New York State goals. Some of it can be specific to the town of Penfield. We're going to look at some case studies and best management practices from peer communities, both in Monroe County, right around us, but also probably a couple across the country that we think have done work that might apply here. We'll identify and analyze actions, both short-term and long-term. We'll prioritize those actions. And, we'll leave all this with the town as really a roadmap to effectively institute climate action and reduce our carbon footprint. So these two bubbles are some of the guiding principles. On the right-hand side are some of the emission sources. That's not an exhaustive list, but it's examples of things that will gather data and verify the data and work that into our analysis. It can be street lightings, energy used in buildings, the vehicle fleets and equipment we talked about, solid waste, wastewater are all things that can produce greenhouse gases, and we'll look for strategies for how to reduce those. This is the process we go through for the inventory that we're involved in now. That's, Sarah Waterman is heading that part of it up. She's working very closely with Lena DeSantis from Anchor QEA. They're communicating, and we're basically gathering all the data we need from the town, from the different groups and different departments. So we're reviewing the operations, identifying the sources. We're collecting and organizing the data. From there, Anchor will actually calculate the emissions, and then we'll develop metrics based on the goals that the town provides. So we're in the early stages of the data collection. So what you see on this slide are just examples from the Monroe County plan, since we don't have the data from the town yet, but that's coming along pretty well. but the sidebar on the right-hand part of the slide was where they came out in terms of what sectors were emitting what percentage of their greenhouse gases. Penfield could be similar, but there may be some differences too. So, a big chunk of it comes from your buildings and your facilities, but the fleet transportation and the solid waste and materials management also contribute. So again, we worked on the Monroe County plan, we're coordinating with their staff, and we'll get quite a lot of support and help there. Our schedule for the project is roughly a year, so we've been on it a couple months. We're going to try to have the final report done for the town by the end of the year. That's the goal. As of right now, we're pretty much on schedule, so that's a good thing, although it's early yet. A lot of that will have to do with how quickly we can get all the data in and get that verified. Once we have the baseline, then things move forward fairly quickly. We have a couple different committees. We have an internal working group that we meet with on a regular basis. We have a larger project advisory committee. We're going to meet with them 3 times during the project. And then we have these various stakeholder groups. So the first 5 town committees that we're talking to form the basis of that, as well as 2 public workshops that'll be open to the public. We'll actually advertise those and try to get people to come in and talk to us. We're going to do one of those probably sometime in June, so sort of early in the project, so folks can see what we're doing, understand what the goals are, look at the data that we've gathered so far, and then we'll try to solicit information from them relative to the project. Second public meeting will be later in the fall, probably when we're starting to work on a draft report, so they can see what we found out, where we're headed in terms of recommendations. But still, we want to have that so that any useful input or engagement we have from the public can be integrated in, and then hopefully done around the end of the year for phase 1. There's a page on the town website specific to this project. We're providing information. The town is posting it. That's accessible with the link you see on the bottom of the slide and QR code as well. We're working with the town to keep that updated. Just every time we come up with new rounds of material, those will get summarized on the website. And that's, in a nutshell, your climate action plan and where it is as of right now. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Is this plan a requirement to apply for grants, do we know? A plan or the Clean Energy Community Certification?
Yeah, so the Climate Smart Community certification is not required for municipalities to get the grants. It probably gives you an edge if you have that certification, but you can go after all the Climate Smart Community New York State grants without having it.
Okay.
So that's why the town is not jumping into that, since it's a fairly, involved effort. But we're gradually checking the boxes. So one of the boxes you need for certification is have you assessed your government facilities and operations. So that's what this is.
That's what the plan does.
But you can still get the grants without the certification, bottom line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would there be recommendations going along with that in your plan that, grants are reasonably obtainable,
Absolutely. I mean, we'll probably have a section in this report and follow up with the community-wide plan on the funding sources related to climate smart development and climate change, because there's more of them. State level, federal level, even some foundations come up with pretty good money if you're doing things to affect climate action. So that'll be part of our information to the town, is where the money is and what you need to go after it.
And then also along with that, would there be like what expected net benefit there might be possibly? Like saving X amount of?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So I probably should have mentioned that, but even on the, what we call ecosystem services, there's metrics to attach dollar values to all of these things. So that'll be part of what we do as well, because that helps people who have to deal with budgets understand, financial ramifications.
I got a question. It's probably more for Tim. For the maintenance equipment, is any of that electric yet, or is any of that like string trimmers, blowers, anything moving in that direction?
So right now, we have like maybe 2 chainsaws that are battery powered. We use those to help clear trails. Other than that, we have 2 fleet vehicles that the town hall primary uses. But as far as the smaller stuff, it's generally gas powered, but we did buy a couple of battery powered chainsaws.
Was anything included in this year's budget for that?
No,
You know of? Okay.
yeah, I'm not too sure about the vehicles end of things, but as far as like just the hand tools, the hand powered stuff, the price is so minimal that just gets absorbed into a regular parks budget.
Anyone else have any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for all your information and your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
If you think of anything after the fact, you can send questions to us anytime, and we'll get answers for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
The next item is the Penfield Trails Committee update. So I'm going to hand that over to Don.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, so let's see, we have guided hikes review. So we've had 2 hikes since our last meeting, given the timing of things. Our March hike was at Whiting Road, and March tends to be our trickiest month for weather. And sure enough, we had a lot of rain. Things were wet, but it was pretty hikeable. Unfortunately, the day we were scheduled, that Saturday, there was a Weather Service high wind warning, and we decided that the risks were we're not willing to take those risks on. It's a mature park. There's a lot of forested area, a lot of woods, trees. So we deferred on that day. We postponed it for a week, and the following Saturday, we actually had good hiking conditions. But I think we had a relatively light turnout, so I think a lot of people just didn't track the the delay. So we had, as it turned out, 4 from the community and 7 from the Trails Committee. So we had 11 people hike. Again, the park shows really well. It's an extensive network. It's a shared use park. I would say it's hike optimized versus bike optimized. And because of the extensive trail network, we were able to hike in the woods, which drains better and the trees absorb the water. So as wet as March was, we had a really good hike in terms of conditions, hiking conditions. Went 3.5 miles, almost 2 hours. So it's a nice park. That's Webster Park. April, probably my favorite hike, and we actually just had it last Saturday. We had beautiful weather. 1,000 Acre Swamp, which is a Nature Conservancy property. We had probably the biggest turnout we've had, other than maybe the history hikes in Shannock-Philbrick. We had 30 people, so 23 from the community, 7 from the Trails Committee, so 30 people. And park showed great. Everything was in, we had good conditions. Lots of the spring ephemerals were out. The flowers and things are coming out. The plants are growing. We saw lots of birds. Some people saw a mink, which is a pretty cool thing to see. So Nature Conservancy does a nice job. That's a great treasure that we have in Penfield. That was about 3 miles, I think, also, right? Yeah, 3 miles for that, almost 2 hours, too, which, actually pretty good for a group that size.
And the Nature Conservancy people were actually out, and they said they'd never seen a group like as big as ours. So they were happy to see the site being used.
Yeah, so it's good. And we actually had an opportunity for people to see the proposed, connection to Rothfuss. It's a visual that's very clear when you're out there. We talk about it sometimes, but for the people who were out there and saw it, like, wow, does that ever make sense? So anyway, very good hike. Our May hike is also can be a really nice one, where it's a Harris Whalen, so much smaller property. but it's a real treasure in terms of, again, the wildflowers and the spring ephemerals and all that. You don't have the wildlife so much, but it's also a really nice hike. It's pretty easy, and it's close and right in town, so, it'd be nice that's a good one to have families, and we've in the past had a pretty good family turnout for that one. So we'll hope for good weather on May 9th.
But
Yeah.
I was going to say, clarification, the agenda says 10 o'clock is really a 9 o'clock. There was an error in the bulletin, brochure that came out, but the start time is 9 o'clock.
Right. So the website's accurate, the flyer that we pass out, the bookmark, all that collateral has been updated to say 9 o'clock, but, we're going to keep kind of pounding that message and allow for people to show up at 10 also.
Okay, thanks. The next item would be the Trails Map update.
Okay. Yeah, so I think last month we had a presentation. We talked about the trail maps. We talked about on-trail signage. Took some action items. One of them was to follow up and provide input on the trail maps that from this committee and from the Trails Committee. And so that's happened. And the town junior planner has just released, he's incorporating that feedback. And he sent out the first several, and they look really good. I'd say, my opinion, ready for print. Minimal feedback on one of the parks. And, so he's still in the process of completing that. You might know any more, I don't know.
Yeah. Everything you said, I agree. It was nice to see kind of all the work that you guys have put in, and then Matt Prinzing, our junior planner, kind of updating them. But great sign for, I think, maybe even next meeting, having the majority of them, if not already on our website, but definitely in the kiosks. And we can do a quick little presentation about all the updates, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Okay, great.
We'll have to make sure he knows that.
Hold on, he knows.
Yeah, and then I think the on-trail signage part of it, the key, the "You Are Here" signs and the blazes and things, that'll be a follow-on activity. But we did generate some cost estimates for doing that work, too.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Parks and Rec update.
So for the parks update, right now, we're just trying to get all the fields ready for the sports groups and just getting ready for the spring, summer season. We did get a couple of the fields lined this morning before we got rained out. That's how it's going to be for probably the next 2 weeks that we got working, trying to dodge the raindrops and get a field here and there when we can get it in. We're starting to mulch Little League because Little League's opening up in 2 weeks. They got their big opening day. We have a lacrosse tournament coming up at Rothfuss, so on the 25th. So we're really getting after it right now. As far as other little projects we got going on, we did plant 6 new trees ahead of the time for the Arbor Day celebration at Rothfuss Park. They're on the big loop on the north end. We planted 3 red maple and 3 white oak, so along the big loop there. So every year we try to plant a couple extra into that area, try to turn that more. It used to be a pretty good forest area until we came in and turned it into a park-like setting, but we're going to try to continue on that trail and plant more trees.
Okay.
And then as far as, court updates, today is April 14th, tomorrow is tax day. So that's technically when we open up all our courts, but we have them open a little early this year. Nice. All the nets are up. They're generally cleaned off. There's still some straggling leaves here and there, but everything is good to go to play tennis, pickleball, basketball.
One of the gates in the Shadow Pines pickleball fence must have gotten yanked open, and it's just twisted all to hell.
Latch twisted.
Yeah.
Roger that.
And with the nets going up too, usually that means when all the nets go up, which I guess is associated with tax day, which is new for me to know.
Well,
Great.
tax day, that's
I
technically
gotcha.
the end of our snow season, but since
But-
it's not snowing, rely on the other event that's going on tomorrow.
But that'll
Not
also.
snowing now.
But that also means that now all the nets that are
From your mouth.
up, Veterans Memorial, Harris Whalen, and Greenwood Park all have lights, and those will go on during the evening. Our public safety goes around and turns those on and off. So with the nets being up, it's also evening play as well. So people can be aware of that.
Tim, my impression is that it's been a windier than normal the last few months. Have you seen more trees down or things like that than?
So,
I know I saw some over at Shadow Pines.
yeah, so those are on our list to do. The ones at Shadow Pines, we usually on the grass areas, we try to let the ground firm up so we can get our trucks out there. But honestly, our highway department and parks department, the last like 5 years, we've hit the dead ash trees harder. So we started that like a while ago. So honestly, we don't see that many as much as we used to.
So it's not the wind.
So it's really not the wind. Yeah, you get the occasional here and there, but not like how it used to be like 10 years ago before we went through and took a lot of the dying and dead ash trees.
How about the barn? I see the fencing is down. It looks like you're just about wrapped up there.
So the fencing's down. It just needs to be regraded. All the wood that we were able to save is in that Verdi container.
Where is that going to live? Is that going to stay there?
To be determined. No, it's not going to live there, but it's to be determined on where we're going to store that. But yeah, it just needs to be a little finish grading, then some seed.
Nice.
Is there a timeline for the regrading and the seeding?
Not that I know of right now.
Is the town doing the grading in the
The
seeding?
town is doing the
Okay.
grading, yeah. Yep. Yeah, we ended up taking down the barn. Our deputy director and a couple of our parks employees took down the barn, stored it, and marked all the salvageable wood. And then we're getting into whenever it dries out enough where we can do a decent job grading.
Understandable.
Did they end up with more salvageable wood than they thought or less?
I guess it depends on who you talk to. I don't think there was as much as people thought.
That's what I was
Once you get on into it.
Yep,
Right.
okay.
But it is still a pretty full container with pretty good lengths that is semi-usable.
And the attempt there would be to, any plans with that?
So that would be up to, I know Supervisor Berry started talking about maybe reforming the Clark Barn Committee, so to get different ideas. And now that we know what we have, and we can move forward with different ideas and stuff like that.
Right, because the barn committee only took it as far as, like, let's take it down safely and salvage the wood, right? They didn't come up with an actual,
They had,
Plan
it
beyond
was
that?
discussed, but I don't think it was anything super official in terms
Okay.
of, again, like what Tim said, it was kind of, let's see what we get and then
Right.
kind of go from there. But
okay.
Because right now, there was a couple pieces saved, about like 2 6-foot lengths that are going to be the mantles in the new Clark Lodge, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
That's an actual thing that can be visible in the coming months, so that's a good plan going forward, but as far as that, it'd be up to the committee that's going to be reformed.
That's a good use of it. Excellent.
Okay, and then the last item, Tim or Andrew, would be the Shadow Pines property shared
Yep.
use trail.
So at the town board legislative meeting this month, we were approved to sign a contract and agreement with Costage Engineering for phases 1 and 2 for the next set of construction and engineering designs for the trails. So this isn't actually moving to construction. This is just kind of that middle step of, we had the concept plans from Further Trail Services, and now we're going to get New York State stamped construction plans. So if and when down the line, funding, things like that come around and the town board wants to move forward with it, we at least have those plans in hand. A large part of the project will be, obviously getting Kostich Engineering up to speed, but a great part about their kind of RFP that came in is they're also consulting Adam Reitz, who was from Further Trail Services. So someone who's already spent tons of time with our community, engaging with them, and also walking the site and doing the research. So it's great to have him on board as part of this project still. So we have our first meeting with Kostich, and then we have some site walks coming up, and I may reach out to some members of this committee if you're interested. I'll throw it out there, and we'll kind of see where after this first meeting goes on Friday. I'll keep everyone updated, but cool to move forward. And then
timeline? I'm sorry, is there a timeline yet, or is it?
Yep, it was right around 6 months, so we're hoping by the end of the year. Part of that, a big thing that was discussed was in July, when a lot of the grant writing and funding that you can get through the state potentially will have 50% of our documents, and that 50% gives us enough to potentially go after funding for next year. So that's exciting to at least hear that with when this project started, we can at least get after that stuff before it's completed. So because we did a lot of community engagement previously with our Parks and Rec master plan, there will be some community involvement, but a lot of this we kind of have with the concept plan, so hopefully they can get it done fairly quickly within those 6 months and see where it goes. But the one thing I did want to add was a lot of the parts, since we just listened to Tom with the climate action plan about speaking about Shadow Pines specifically, a great thing about this project that the Kostich is coming up with is basically like a native planting guide and talking about the ecosystems. And we already work with Penfield Color Green, but this kind of enhances a lot of the work that they've already done. So we'll be working with them and utilizing that as the naturalization potentially moves forward with these trails being able to access some of those meadow areas and things like that. So all good stuff with these plans kind of coming together.
Thank you. Just want to say thank you very much to Tim and his team. I know you guys spent a lot of time and effort behind the scenes, so getting those nets up a day early, great job.
Yeah, they do a great job.
They're not behind the scenes, they're out there.
They do a great job.
Yeah, they're great.
So the next item on our agenda is the Penfield Recs update, so I'll shoot that over to Andrew.
Yep. So we just finalized our summer 2026 brochure with our printing company yesterday. So those will be printed the remainder of this week, and then we usually give it about 2 weeks to hit resident mailboxes. So late April, early May, everyone will get, if you're a resident, your summer brochure. We'll have it posted on our website, and registration for residents begins May 11th, with non-residents May 18th. A lot of great programming that we have to offer this summer, a lot of great events. Some of the things to highlight that are coming up, we have our Arbor Day and EV Car Show event, which is Saturday, May 2nd at the Penfield Community Center. A lot of that information is already on the website, so go and check it out. We have our summer concert series all booked and scheduled, which are Tuesday evenings, June all the way through August. We have 10 total concerts, and 3 of those are family kid concerts. So we're looking forward to that. And then our Independence Day is planning to be held on Saturday, June 27th with our parade and fireworks. We have a weather makeup day scheduled for the next day on Sunday, which would be mainly just the fireworks celebration part of it. And then following the Saturday and Sunday, the town is working with our many different departments to offer anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 programs every day, pretty much Monday through Friday, all the way leading up to July 4th, celebrating the 250th birthday of our country. So we're really excited to that. More information is going to be shared in early May, so you can check out our website. A lot of our things, because there's moving parts and we're trying to add different programs, a lot of that will be focused on the website through the town, so check it out. But really just a great week of programming following our parade and fireworks, so we're excited about that. We also have our Good Neighbor Day event, which is a town event that we have a bunch of people contact the recreation department that may need some assistance with their yards and spring cleaning and things like that. The rec department coordinates a bunch of volunteers and basically, works with the different groups that contact us or homeowners. And we send people to different locations. They help clean up. It's really just a great way to go out and help your community and your neighbors. And it is named after Terry Rothfuss, who started this stuff by being a great neighbor. So we're planning on using Rothfuss Park soon. So it's a great reason to kind of start off on April 25th when we've got a lacrosse tournament at Rothfuss Park to have Good Neighbor Day. So if you're interested in anything regarding Good Neighbor Day, just reach out to the rec department. Sabrina Renner can help you out. And then lastly, I wanted to mention Penfield Forward Tomorrow's Town Spaces. Our community survey was originally scheduled to end on March 31st. We thought we wanted as much feedback as possible, so we pushed it out another 2 weeks because it kind of fell right around spring break, where hopefully a lot of people got away and got some good weather and then brought it back for now. But now that the survey is closed, the group is going to put together all that stuff, and then more information will come out in future community engagements. I believe they're planning on being at the Arbor Day and EV Car Show event to have some information where you can interact with the group, but then also on some public presentations as well coming up this spring.
Great, thank you very much. Our next item is other business. We don't have any, so I'm going to move on from that. No held items at this point either. So the next item would be the old business. No updates on Thousand Acre?
No, I don't have any. I don't have anything new.
Okay. Yeah, I know we talked about that was like a year-long plus project, so.
I requested an update. I didn't get it yet.
Okay.
And I don't want to take it off, too. Don's done a lot of work. I think we talk about it every time, even though we don't have to do anything with it.
Okay, so new business. Steve has some stuff about some disc golf.
Yeah, just a quick update. Last time we talked, it was winter, so not a lot of activity out here, especially in upstate New York or western New York. But March, the weather got much nicer, and so we returned back to the #1 played course in New York State. We had a relapse, if you will, in February timeframe where it dropped down a little bit, but we're back to #1. 125th in the USA and 157th in the world in terms of the amount of play, which again just shows kind of the significant draw that this course has and the amount of interest that people have for playing it, which is great. A lot of lost discs have been returned through the lockbox. About half of the ones I got from you last week got returned, so that's been very helpful. John Kelly also shared some other stats with me, which I thought were pretty interesting. And one of the stats was just, it wasn't so much from a competitive standpoint, but more of a comparative standpoint about the amount of activity that residents in a community get from pickleball. And then you compare that to also the amount of activity associated with disc golf. And it looks like it's about the amount of time, if you take a look at about a 12-hour day, the amount of players that can play disc golf is about twice as many as you would get within that equivalent time for pickleball. But of course, Shadow Pines has 10 courts for pickleball. So you kind of draw those numbers in, and we have a great amount of opportunity for recreational sportsmanship, sports activities for our community, just in Shadow Pines alone. And so I thought that was pretty significant. So disc opportunities, about twice as many players to have a chance to get out there. And that calculation is really kind of based on 4 players taking about 1 hour for 9 holes in disc golf, and 4 people on a given court taking about 1 hour for a match. So you kind of draw those numbers up, and you get close to 2 to 1, but again, not competitive, comparative statistics, just to show the opportunity in the community. So I thought those were pretty cool numbers.
Yeah, and I think if you look at all the different things that Shadow Pines, that has been put into place by the town over the years, with the Clark House, hopefully, construction schedule going well, hopefully this summer into early fall that will potentially open up. If you're interested in reservations and things like that, all those things are being discussed. The town will push out all that information, hopefully looking towards late summer and fall. But that also means the parking lot opens up a lot more to give easier access. It's also actual bathrooms on site for cross-country meets, for disc golf. So even with all of the play that's there, that's awesome. You know, Tim and his crew have done a wonderful job with the grass area parking lot that I believe is planning on being opened up because the fencing is still going to be there for the construction until the fruition of the project.
Yeah, there's going to be a period of time where they're going to start paving and doing some topsoil work, working on the trails around the Clark Lodge, where we're going to have to shut down that parking lot, shut down some of the trails, put signs up next to that. So like we don't have people coming in because it needs time to settle, new asphalt, that kind of thing. So we'll keep everybody posted on that. And in the next couple weeks before that tournament, that's on the 8th or the 9th, we're going to open up that grass parking lot for the disc golf players.
Yeah, the soil should be hardened by then.
I think weather pending, I think weather pending, they're hoping to repave the parking lot, at the existing parking lot, by the end of April into early May. And
That's
again,
the final top layer, right?
that would just be all of the existing current parking lot just being redone as a part of the project. Again, it wouldn't open up in terms of the fencing. The fencing is still going to be where it is, but at least it'll be repaved. But we do have the first disc golf tournament scheduled for May 9th, so we're trying to get that done prior to that. But like Tim said, the grass parking lot will be open for access to that.
There's no chance they could reduce the fencing, to make it a smaller area?
I believe we've asked, I've asked multiple times just over the years, especially with cross-country and things like that. I think because it's a construction zone, they have to keep that until the entire project's done. Now, I am not a part of that team, so I'm just telling you the answers that I've got. I know that we've pushed and tried to have that. But, because the schedule is going so well, hopefully that opens up soon. And I know another lodge in Penfield, everything that I've heard, I did a walkthrough early on, but it's supposed to be really, really nice. So we're really looking forward to having that space open for people to rent and use for other recreation things too, weddings, things like that. So it would be cool to have that added amenity.
That property is such an asset to the town. It's excellent. I'm glad that that kind of action was taken.
Yep.
Andrew, is anyone, or do you know how many people use or take advantage of the discs that are available for loan or rent?
We've only had a handful since we started that last year. And usually it's people that come in and they ask about maybe doing a program and, hey, I'm learning the course or learning how to play disc golf or learning how to play pickleball. And it's nice because we have instructions and how to actually play the game. Thank you to Steve and his crew for providing those with the discs. We have the same thing for pickleball, but it hasn't been a crazy amount, but
There's
still
some
available. You
courses
can
that
rent it for free.
Discs up at the kiosks, right? But I think that we'd have a challenge. Unfortunately, they tend to get lifted. So,
Yeah, no, that's right.
And we've
As long as people know it's available, that's,
yeah.
get the word out, right?
Yeah.
And we have, years ago, we met, I think Tim might have been involved, maybe not, but with talking about like a company to come in that actually makes kind of like different lockers and things like that you can rent.
Yeah.
We kind of went the route of we didn't want, that to be an added cost with these new things. We wanted to make it free and available, but based on what we've kind of had, maybe that is an option. Because I know LaSalle's Landing, it'd be really cool to have like a kayak rental down there. I probably shouldn't say that too loud. The kayak rental place across the street.
Is it like a key code?
But it's basically, it's a QR code. You go in there, you download it, you pay and everything there. You get the rental, you put it back. They do all the work, and then we kind of just get that amenity. So
I think there's
that-
something to be said about having the stuff right on site too.
Agreed.
So that's the challenge of, like, if it's not there, people may not know about it, but also, like, you think of kids maybe wanting to be at the park and rent the equipment. They gotta go all the way, maybe not in a car, maybe they walked there, and they have to figure that out, so.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the big part, and we were using this free option to say, hey, this is a great way. If it's not being utilized, maybe that's the next step of having it on site, which I think would be really cool for all of our various locations, like the bocce courts, a couple different pickleball areas, and disc golf as well. So,
Do you remember the name of the company?
not off the top of my head. I know there's a couple other places in Monroe County that utilizes it. More of it was access to water. It was their kayak stuff, but they were trying to get into the pickleball and the disc golf.
Yeah, I don't know
as
if there's
well.
anybody in this area, that disc golf courses that are using something like that. I don't think anybody is doing that.
But it might just be that one thing of, you get one, and then you get a couple extra options at a cheaper cost for the various activities. So it might be something we can look into.
We have plenty of discs to donate,
But,
absolutely.
Andrew, you mentioned, if we just put a stack out there for people to just borrow, you thought they'd get lifted. Steve, I'm wondering is there any experience around the country of people just putting discs out and whether or not they really would get stolen?
Yeah, I looked into that. There are some courses in different areas of the country that actually have a bunch of bags hung up outside the course. Most of the feedback that I've seen is that unfortunately has not worked very well because the discs are still worth a couple of bucks. So easy to lift, relatively easy to remove any kind of identification that's on the disc in the Sharpie marker. Early on, there were some problems at Shadow Pines before we even had the lockbox, that if you lost a disc, there were people that were actually even going into the pond, grabbing the discs and taking them to a local sports shop to turn them in to get credits for other stuff. So, by the time we get all done, it's interesting to me that they would get lifted, yet I still get a lot of discs returned through the lockbox, as well as John Kelly, that people never come to pick them up. So that's how we get all the discs for donation, right? So I don't think that the club would have any aversion to putting some discs out on the course. I just don't know how long that would last. Yeah. Could be an option, yeah.
Well, it's nice to incentivize people to sort of bring them back to one location too, right? So they're centrally there, like at a lockbox or wherever.
Yeah.
So when people come out, it's not like there's discs sort of strewn everywhere. You don't know if it's there for your use or just somebody left it behind.
Yeah, I think my suggestion is if you want to try something like that, maybe we have like a focus week or 2 weeks and say, hey, we're going to leave product out, discs out there so people can come and try to kind of help spur it. That might be a way, if
Yeah,
that's something.
we do beginner programs. We work with John and others to offer actual rec programs to showcase those things, and kind of that rental goes with it. You sign up for the program, you take the program, you get to use set equipment with somebody kind of showing you how to do it. But yeah, good to have options.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay. Next item, public feedback. Anything, Andrew or Linda? Okay. Moving on, our next meeting is May 12th at 6 o'clock at the Penfield Town Hall. Meeting adjourned.